girls, it's me. And I'm sitting out here in the garage, and you can see I'm next to the radio flyer here. And I'm just trying to stay out of the sun. I wanted to do this outdoors, but it's still 88 degrees here in Central New Jersey today, so got a lot to talk about in a short time to do it. First of all, let me mention that I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend, but even more important, I hope everybody took some time out to thank the men and women who have served or are serving now in our armed forces that allow us to have our freedom. So I hope that everybody done that, and I want to say a personal thank you of my own for you to help us along with that. So without them, I couldn't sit in the garage right now and talk about stupid radio things that I usually take. So thank you. I want to give a shout out to some of the newbies that I've been talking to through my Radio Wild 67 at Gmail email address, and that's Carlos, Gary, and Jason. So I hope you guys are getting along good and having fun with your progress and your projects. I also want to do a follow-up on, I wanted to do this a little while back, but if you remember about 3 weeks or so ago, I did a 5-part restoration of an Emerson EC-425 radio, and the young man who was 6 years old and wanted his grandma's radio to work and play okay. So I basically, he came here with his mom to pick the radio up, and it was kind of funny. I had the radio plugged in. I wanted to demonstrate it, so when they got here, they could actually see the radio play and all that. And he looked at it, and he said, "Hey, Mommy, look, he's charging it up for us." And I just started to crack up because in his world, I mean, man, he's 6 years old. He has an iPad, I guess, or maybe it's his mother's iPad or his father's iPad, and he thought that we were charging it up, but it didn't work that way because this guy's got some pretty significant tubes in there. So we turned the radio on and we tuned it around, and we were able to find there's an oldie station about 25 miles from here on AM, and we were able to tune that in and have it play some music. And man, his eyes lit up, and his mom was starting to tear up because she probably hadn't seen the radio go for a long time. So here's a picture of him. His mom sent me a picture, and the young man's name is Easton, by the way, and Easton here is tuning the radio. You can see it in this picture. Now I want to talk about the radio flyer and some of the things that I've done to the car since basically since the fall, and little improvements I made. You got to remember it's a 49-year-old car, so it's going to need some work here and there. So here's what I've had to do to the car. One of the things we had to address was the car on that side basically I was underneath of it, and I went to change the oil, and I saw a lot of oil underneath. And at first, I just thought it was just a commonplace thing. It might have just been I'll walk around here, maybe the valve cover gasket on these valve covers. But they were all tight, and this was all good in here. But what it ultimately ended up being is back in here, there's actually a rubber gasket that goes on the front and the back of the motor. And the one in the back of the motor was being a rubber part, and the car and the engine is 49 years old, they kind of went away. So that's why if you look at it, you can see that the intake manifold is a little bit cleaner and shinier than the rest of the motor. Well, that's because I had to pull the intake manifold completely off. I had this all off the motor. Took the intake off, all new gaskets, and while I had it off, I kind of spray painted the motor to make it look a little bit nicer. I was kind of up on the fence whether to paint it or not, but I just decided to go ahead and paint it anyway. So that was quite of a task. That was really a big job, but it ended up being really good. Now, if you look down here, another thing I had to do, well, actually, I didn't. Actually, my uncle found this out. We were driving this to E-Town. You see this? Here's the distributor here, and then you see this nice shiny vacuum advance. This thing wasn't running so good that morning, and then usually this thing runs a little bit rough until it warms up anyway. But we tested this guy out while we were in Englishtown in my space, and the vacuum vents wasn't working, so we actually replaced it and put that on there. It actually made the car run better. And but then I started having some problems with the weights and springs in here. So right now I've literally got, there's the vacuum vents. I got it disconnected. And what's going to happen is in the near future, hopefully before the end of the week, we're going to replace the points distributor, and we're going to put in a real HEI GM distributor to substitute for this, and that'll give us more spark. I've got everything complete, cap, rotor wires are going to come with it, and it's going to cost me about $170 for all those parts and that upgrade. So it'll make the car run a little bit better. The other problem I was having with this thing was with this Carter AFB, and if you look down here where I got the pointer, there's a screw here and a screw here. These are what they call these are idle circuits, and you adjust them while the car is in idle to control the mixture. Okay, the carburetor is called, actually the manufacturer's name is Carter, and it's an AFB 4-barrel carburetor, and it uses 2 floats. Now, they are on the sides of the carburetor as it sits in the car. So you can see this one here would be in the carburetor as it's bolted onto the top of the intake manifold. This one would be on the passenger side of the car, and this one is on the driver's side of the car. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, let me explain for you non-car people what floats do in a carburetor. What they do is, you see this little tab thingy down here, and there's one down here too. Okay, what happens is that these sit in what's called a float bowl. The float bowl fills up with gasoline. As you drive, the fuel pump is pumping fuel up, and it goes through a couple of filters and ends up ultimately in the float bowl, and there's a float bowl on either side of this carburetor. So what happens is the float will rise as the float bowl fills up, and then once it reaches to a certain point, this little tab down here and the one for this side over here shuts off a needle seat assembly, so that once you reach a certain amount of fuel in the float bowl, they shut off. Okay, so here's what was happening with the car. As I was driving down the road, and this one again was on the driver's side and this was on the passenger side, if I made a hard left-hand turn, or if I broke really hard on the car, like I had to do almost like an emergency stop, the car would stall. And there was a reason for that. I'm going to have to reach in here and grab. Now this float is actually still good. It's fine. Alright, and it's it's sealed up real good. You can see what they do is that they actually braze some solder all around here. This was the way it was made. It's in 2 parts. So this one's still good, actually. Could use it again. This one is not a float anymore. It's a sinker, or I would call it a sinker. And the reason is, can you hear that? Half of this float is full of gasoline or fuel. So what would happen is, now this became heavy, and when it went to pick up, it wouldn't pick up. So it just was constantly filling. Here, let me turn this back around. So on this side, or on the driver's side of the float bowl, this was constantly filling up with gasoline. And then what it would do is that once I lowered the engine RPMs, or I was starting to slow down, thus losing, it would drop the manifold vacuum, it would just basically start dumping raw fuel into the carburetor, into the motor, and that's why the car would eventually stall. So anyway, we got the carburetor straightened out. Now this thing runs better than it's ever run. The floats that I had came out of a 4106 Edelbrock carburetor, and that carburetor was probably only about a couple years old, and I didn't pay anything for it. One of my people I used to work with gave it to me because he had that on one of his cars, and he didn't play with cars anymore, so he just gave me the whole carburetor. So I cleaned the floats and everything, checked the height, put them in this carburetor. Now this thing runs great. It's never run that good. So once I get the HEI installed, this thing's really going to be really run super nice. And the car's only got 51,000 miles on it, so still got a lot of life left. Okay, boys and girls, I guess that's going to be it for today. I wanted to squeeze more in, but I don't want to make the video too long because I know everybody's got a life and I want you to sit around and watch my videos all day. Listen, one last thing. I have a guy I used to work with, and I don't know if you've ever seen on television or maybe on the web, you ever see those battle bots? Those people have those remote control robots and they go beat each other up, and they got saws and flames and hammers, and they spin around and they go beat each other up. Well, my coworker used to do this. He's been doing it for 20 years, and he's still doing it. And now he's going to be on ABC TV. They're doing a summer fill-in show with BattleBots, and his robot is actually in it. So the regular season starts June the 23rd. I don't know what day that is. I should have wrote it down. But if you can get the ABC TV app, you could actually see they had to have a qualifier because they had so many robots on the show. They had to have a qualifier to fill in the last couple of slots. So my friend Al's BattleBot is actually in there, and if you go get the ABC app, or you can go find it online on abc.com, it's called The Gears Awaken. So if you go into there, there's going to be actually 3 sets of 3 robots battling it out. And my friend Al's robot's going to be in the second thing. So go check that out. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoyed watching it. So anyway, everybody, take care, and we'll catch up with you hopefully in a week or two. So have a good week, and take care. Bye. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.